Opening credits. Bad Star. Blind Girl and Billionaire Romantic Short Story. By Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated, using Google technology. Chapter 1. Rainn was out walking with her sister Yvonne near Liverpool Street. It was their tradition. Rainn would smell the curry, the vegan burgers and the coffee shops. She would listen to the sounds of people chatting, looking through shop windows and checking each other out. Rainn would sense the change in the daylight, and many other things that she could only imagine on the black canvas of her mind. With her newly gained French accent, Yvonne would describe the world to her. She made sweet, witty descriptions, highlighting the strangeness of human interactions before them. It was warm May evening and many people were out, walking, hurrying home, drinking outside pubs or simply enjoying the evening air. The two sisters were waiting at a crossing when Yvonne spotted a youth attempting to steal a woman's handbag. She immediately ran to help. In the moment Yvonne left Rainn's side, Rainn stumbled out into the street and was hit by a Porsche. Rainn woke up for a second. Someone was holding her head up, asking her to speak to him. She inhaled his woody masculine scent. It struck her as natural and clean, reminding her of skin that was out in the sun all day. She passed out feeling strangely safe in his hands. She woke up again at the hospital. Yvonne told her she was hit by a car and suffered minor surgery for a broken arm. She told Rainn about the man who hit her and rushed her to the emergency room. Yvonne painted an intimidating picture of the wealthy stranger. Rainn remembered his smell and felt strangely aroused and in love in a very deep organic way. She felt he would come and see her soon, giving her mixed feelings that she just couldn't understand. He walked in at that very moment. Rainn completely blown away by the now familiar smell, the happiness and worry in voice. They shared an emotional conversation together, brief yet intense. The wealthy stranger introduced himself as Jack. He left, as did Yvonne, and Rainn was left alone to rest. She drifted off, thinking about all she was experiencing. She fantasized about Jack, and remembered the conversation they had over and over. She imagined what she should have said and looked like. She felt excited and a little sad, already deeply in love but intimidated. What chances would she have with a man that any woman would die to get their hands on? She fell asleep knowing this accident would change her forever. Upon returning, Jack gave Rainn a book. She could feel the book was old and used. She told her it was his favorite book as a child. He read a story to her about a prince who never understood the joy of sharing his wealth. The prince died with his soul remaining trapped in a statue raised after his funeral. The statue was covered in gold and had two huge blue eyes made from hundreds of sapphires. Through his precious jewels, he saw beggars, orphans, and the elderly pass him every day. He had a bird that told him each of these people's stories. The prince felt so sad for them that he asked the bird to give these people one by one the sapphires that made his gleaming eyes, leaving him blind. The bird became his sight. Towards the end of the story, the prince also gave his golden coating to the poor, losing all his shine. He became a simple statue, made of only lead. The prince was torn down and melted. When the metal melted, the only thing remaining was his heart. Jack ended the story, and they both remained silent. Rainn asked Jack if his eyes were blue like the prince. Jack replied that they were, adding that he would gladly give them away for a heart. He left her the book. Rainn fell asleep with it in her hand, as she wondered how this irony would unfold. Chapter 2. The day after Rainn was released from hospital, her cousin visited her at home. "I'm sorry," said Margaret. "I wanted to come while you were still in hospital." Rainn laughed. "You mean you wanted me to stay in hospital longer? You know that's not what I meant. I wanted to get an earlier flight, but I couldn't." "Margaret, you needn't have. It's such a long way to come, and I'm fine really." "Rainn, you were hit by a car. Of course I was going to come. I'd have come to wherever you were. I'm not badly hurt. I was shaken, but these injuries will heal." "It doesn't matter," said Margaret. "I wanted to come." She was silent for a while, and Rainn knew what she was thinking. "Where's Yvonne?" she asked eventually. "At work?" She heard Margaret shift in her seat. It was enough to know how she felt. "Don't be angry with her," she said. "How can I not be angry?" said Margaret. "How can she be so negligent? It wasn't her fault. It was me. I was stupid. It wouldn't have happened if she had kept an eye on you. She can't keep an eye on me all the time. You could have been killed. I wasn't. That was just good fortune." "Maybe," said Rainn. "I'm not sure what it was." Margaret poured tea from the teapot. Rainn took her cup, and she listened to Margaret stir in her milk and sugar. "And the car driver?" Margaret asked. "What will happen to him? Was he speeding? Have the police spoken to him?" "It wasn't his fault. I stepped off the curb straight into him." "Well, maybe. But he should still apologize. If anything, I should apologize to him. I knocked the wing mirror clean off his Porsche." "Oh, poor him," scoffed Margaret. "He'll probably ask you to pay to have it replaced." "I offered," blushed Rainn. "What?" Margaret spluttered on her tea. "He came into the hospital. I said sorry, and asked if I could pay for the damage." "Are you crazy?" asked Margaret. "That's what he said. Anyway, he wouldn't hear of it. Probably feeling guilty." "Maybe." Rainn nodded. "He didn't seem like that, though. He seemed," she tailed away. "He seemed what?" asked Margaret suspiciously. Rainn could imagine her eyes narrowing. "Nice," said Rainn. "Kind. We got on very well." "You got on," repeated Margaret. "How many times did you see him?" "I meant meet." "I know what you meant," smiled Rainn. "A few times. He brought me gifts." "Did he? I wonder what he wanted." "I told you we get on. There is no need to be suspicious." Rainn cast her mind back to those conversations in the hospital ward. The smell of Jack, mixed with the heavy scent of flowers, had lulled her into a pleasant mood, as she lay on the plump cushions. Maybe it was the medication, maybe it was the shock, but there had been something in that room, something in Jack's melodious voice that Rainn had found soothing. She had never felt like that before. "You get on," said Margaret, interrupting Rainn's thoughts. "Do you mean get on, or got on?" Rainn smiled. "I don't know. We will see what happens." She could imagine Margaret frowning at this. "And what do you know about this man apart from he drives a Porsche and gives gifts?" "What else is there to know?" asked Rainn. She was grinning as Margaret tutted. "He sounds like a criminal. What's his name?" "Jack. He did tell me his surname, but I've forgotten it. I was a little disorientated at the time." "And what does he do?" "Works in film." Rainn could feel Margaret's suspicion, which amused her greatly. "Anything else?" "Just that he's a nice guy. Interesting and funny. And he's got a lovely voice. I feel like I've heard it before." "Do you think he's famous?" "Maybe he's an actor. He said he worked in film. Perhaps he's just being modest." "Wait a second," said Margaret. "You said his name was Jack?" Before Rainn could answer, she could hear Margaret rushing through to the kitchen. When Margaret returned, Rainn could tell she was carrying a newspaper. "Yesterday's paper," Margaret said. "I picked it up at the airport." She proceeded to thumb through it. "Do you think that maybe the man's surname might have been Bradley?" Rainn clapped her hands. "That's it. Exactly. Have you heard of him? Is he famous? A celebrity?" Margaret found what she had been looking for, and read in a rather world-weary way. Dangerous Jeopardy actor Jack Bradley, 32, admitted to being involved in a car accident near Liverpool Street Station at the weekend. At first, Carolyn Jones, his agent, had denied the heartthrob's involvement. However, when footage was uploaded to social media by onlookers, she was forced to issue the following statement. Mr. Bradley was present at a small traffic accident. It was in no way his fault, and the police have not been involved. He has since visited a hospital to visit the woman who was injured, and has left her flowers and other gifts. Jack Bradley, who has been involved in recent controversy over allegations of drug use on the set of his current set, was photographed last night leaving an exclusive restaurant with his girlfriend, Chelsea Lopez, 24. "Oh," said Rainn. There seemed nothing else to say. Margaret sighed. "There's a photograph. Looks like a nice restaurant. Italian, I guess. He's a good-looking man. I recognize him now. He's wearing a nice suit. What about his girlfriend? I've no idea what she's wearing. Not very much. Her legs are ridiculous. Can't tell much about her face. She's hiding it behind a pair of huge sunglasses." Rainn felt tears form in her eyes. She wasn't sure whether it was because of sadness or frustration at her own naivety. "Oh, come on, Rainn," coaxed Margaret. "Don't feel like that." She handed her a tissue. "Now we know who he is, there's no need to feel bad." "You mean because he would never want someone like me?" sobbed Rainn. "That's not what I'm saying. Quite the opposite. You would never want someone like him. I can't say I know much about Jack Bradley, but all I know is bad. You deserve better than someone like that." "What do you know?" asked Rainn. "Well, I know that he uses his wealth and fame to surround himself with young, trophy girlfriends who are usually no more than a pair of long legs and a pair of designer sunglasses. I'm sure he doesn't even like them anyway, as he cheats repeatedly with no qualms. I read that this has made him lose all respect for women and cynical to the core. He strikes me as the jealous type. Possessive even though he won't stay faithful himself." Margaret paused to sip her tea with a very superior air. "I know he is going through a very public career crisis. It's probably why he was flying round in his Porsche." "He wasn't speeding," interrupted Rainn. "Well, whatever," shrugged Margaret. "Then there's the rumors of drug use and his horrible temper. You could imagine how the violence in his films might spill over to his private life." "Is that a fact or your opinion?" asked Rainn. Margaret folded the paper. "It's what people say." And then to change the subject she asked, "Have you heard from John?" "John?" repeated Rainn, as if she had never heard of him. "Oh God, John. I hadn't thought. You mean you haven't told him about the accident?" "I didn't have chance," protested Rainn, wondering if she looked guilty. "I probably should have." "You two are still friends, aren't you?" "Of course we are. We're always friends. Always have been. Always will be." "Invite him for dinner," said Margaret. "I'll make something. You, me, Yvonne and John. It will be fun." "You've just flown in, you can't be making dinner." "Nonsense," snorted Margaret, standing up. "You can call him. Your phone is in the kitchen, I'll get it." Chapter 3. Rainn's phone was on the kitchen table. As Margaret went to pick it up, she saw Jack's name flashing as an incoming call. Without thinking, she answered the call before the phone rang, pushed open the kitchen door and stepped out into the back garden. "Yes," she said. "Rainn, is that you?" "She's sleeping," said Margaret. "She is still very weak and needs some time to recover." "Yes, of course," said Jack. "I understand. Could you ask her to call me back when she wakes?" "I'm not sure that's a good idea," said Margaret. "What the hell? What are you talking about?" "I'm not sure it's a good idea for you to talk to Rainn anymore," she stated calmly. "Who gives a damn what you think? Who are you anyway? Put Rainn on." "I don't know you," demanded Jack angrily. "You don't know me, but we all know you, Mr. Bradley. We all know what you are like, because the whole of your private life is plastered across the gossip pages of our newspapers. And to be honest, it doesn't look pretty. It actually looks very ugly," snapped Margaret. "Don't talk to me like that, you snooty cow. Put Rainn on now." "Or what?" asked Margaret. "Are you going to shout at me like you shout at those poor extras in your film sets? Slap me like you slap your girlfriends? Or maybe you'll run me over next in your Porsche?" I have never slapped anyone. If you dare repeat that accusation, my lawyers will be down on you like a ton of bricks. Whatever, yawned Margaret. Listen, said Jack, trying hard to be calm. I would really appreciate it if I could speak to Rainn. She knows me better than you. Everything you've read in the newspapers is just horrible gossip. Rainn knows me, the real me, and I think you should let her decide for herself. It's nice that you're protective of her, but she's certainly no fool. She is well capable of making decisions for herself. Perhaps, said Margaret. But she's had a nasty shock. I'm worried about her. And I'm certain she doesn't need someone like you pestering her for your own objectives. I'm not pestering her, and I have no idea what you mean by my own objectives. I just want to speak to her, and I think she wants to speak to me. Pleaded Jack. Come on, Mr. Bradley. Your acting might have convinced Rainn in her current susceptible state. It might convince gullible cinema audiences on Saturday nights, but it doesn't convince me. I can see you want to use Rainn as a convenient prop to improve your public image. A pretty blind girl you helped after an accident. It's perfect. You despicable cow, snarled Jack. Margaret sniffed. I work in PR, Mr. Bradley. I know how it works. Let me tell you this. I pampered Rainn because I was taken aback by her stunning beauty. Not because I felt guilty, it was her beauty. I admit that. I am a man who enjoys beautiful women, and Rainn is as beautiful as I have ever seen. Do you expect some kind of award? Snorted Margaret, her voice laden with sarcasm. I pampered her with nice things, but I quickly realized that expensive gifts don't mean that much to her. Do you know what she liked the best? Do you know what she appreciated more than anything else? She loved it when I read to her. Can you believe that? I've never met a girl who has appreciated a story more than an expensive perfume. You shock me, Mr. Bradley. I can hardly believe that Chelsea Lopez doesn't enjoy a quiet evening in curled up by the fire with Chekhov. I didn't just read to her, he said evenly, as he managed to control his frustration and obvious dislike. I talked to her, told her things about my life I've never told anyone. And she listened and didn't judge me. She's a good listener, said Margaret. That much is true. It's a shame she had to listen to all your celebrity neurosis. Please listen. I feel things for Rainn I've never felt for anyone before. She is witty, clever, and has a purity I've never experienced. I can well believe that, Mr. Bradley. Your sordid life seems to be particularly devoid of anything resembling purity. So you will understand my reluctance to let you sour her purity with your infamy. Please, begged Jack, Rainn has made me feel like a real person. At long last I have found someone who makes me feel whole. Don't try to come between us. It will end badly for you if you do. Mr. Bradley, that sounds like a threat. This is not one of your blockbusters. Spare me the melodrama. Jack spoke quietly, with meaning. You won't come between us. You are irrelevant. Margaret sighed. I may be irrelevant. But Rainn already has a boyfriend and he is not. So you might as well give up now. What? Shouted Jack, unable to control the fury in his voice. What boyfriend? She never mentioned a boyfriend. I'm sorry. But she has a long-term boyfriend, so your interest is unwanted. What's his name? Snarled Jack. John, retorted Margaret without thinking. Well, you can tell John the same thing I told you. Neither of you will stand between Rainn and I. Goodbye, Mr. Bradley. I shall block your number now. Do what you like. It will make no difference. Margaret ended the call and blocked him as she said she would. She was angry and acted before she had a chance to feel bad about doing something behind Rainn's back. If Rainn had heard the way he had spoken, she wouldn't have wanted to speak to him, she reasoned. She phoned John and invited him for dinner, and he happily accepted. Rainn looked up inquiringly as Margaret came back into the room. Did I get a call? She asked. Yes, you did, from John, lied Margaret, so I answered and invited him for dinner. I hope you don't mind. Chapter 4. It was a good meal. Rainn thought Margaret would give Yvonne a hard time about the accident, but she seemed to have other things on her mind. It was nice to see John again. After he got over the shock of discovering she had been in an accident, he was quickly back to his good-humored self. The 4 diners had shared 2 bottles of wine, and were slouching at the kitchen table, contemplating the washing up, when there was a loud knock at the front door. Yvonne jumped up and went to answer it. They could hear her talking animatedly to a man. Rainn's ears pricked up as she listened attentively. Could it be him, she wondered. But how? Margaret frowned and looked uneasy. The kitchen door opened and Yvonne entered, closely followed by Jack. Before Yvonne could announce his arrival, Rainn had recognized the scent and leapt up. He took a step towards her, as she flung her arms around his neck. Jack, she cried excitedly. How did you find me? Jack laughed. Careful, he warned, you'll crush the flowers. They smell wonderful, said Rainn. Are they all for me? One bunch, teased Jack. The other is for the lady I spoke with earlier. He looked down at the table and gazed coolly at Margaret. These are for you. Thanks, said Margaret, taking the flowers. I'll put them in some water. It was her idea that I should pay you visit, elaborated Jack, smiling at everyone. I hadn't realized you were having dinner. It's such a shame, exclaimed Rainn, we've only just finished. Yes, what a shame, said Margaret. But tell us, Mr. Bradley, how did you find the house? Please call me Jack, he said, smiling very hard. It's not so difficult these days. We don't have much privacy now, do we? I should know. He gave a little grin, and Yvonne and Rainn laughed. And this must be John, Jack continued. The John I've heard so much about. John made to stand up, but Jack stepped over quickly, so he stayed seated. When John put out his hand to shake, Jack put his over it, and held it for a little longer than he might, looking John in the eye, as if holding him down, overbearing him. Hi, said John. What do you do, John? I just work in an office. I'm sure you do, said Jack and let his hand drop. John had to shake his arm to get the circulation moving again, and he raised a quizzical eyebrow at Margaret. I feel like I'm crowding you all in here, said Jack. Rainn, do you mind if we take a walk in the garden? If the others don't mind us being excused. Jack led her down the narrow garden, away from the kitchen window of the terraced house. There was a little vegetable plot where Rainn had planted some carrots, and a small greenhouse with a broken window. Jack looked at them disdainfully. So, he said, John seems a nice guy. Quite good-looking in his own way. I think he's lovely, agreed Rainn brightly. He's always been popular with girls. I suppose it's because he's so easy to get on with, and he's funny too. That's nice, said Jack, bringing his foot down on the frilly green leaves of a carrot plant. But is a nice guy really enough for you? I'm not sure, said Rainn, her face wrinkling in obvious bafflement that near enough broke Jack's heart. I mean, is nice all you want in a boyfriend? Persisted Jack. Boyfriend? Rainn laughed and brought her hands up to her mouth. John, my boyfriend. Is that what you mean? This time it was Jack's turn to look baffled. So John's not your boyfriend? He said slowly. No. No, not at all. He's a friend. A good friend. But that's all. He's never shown any feelings for me. Jack threw his head back and laughed. Oh really? He said. I'm so sorry. I got completely the wrong end of the stick. Why the hell would you think that? Asked Rainn. Oh, I've no idea, said Jack slowly. I'm just a jealous fool, I guess. You're not a fool, said Rainn. She put her left hand on his shoulder and
censored
him lightly on the cheek. But I am jealous. I see, said Jack, smiling. Without speaking, Rainn placed her right hand on his other shoulder and
censored
his other cheek. Then they
censored
again on the lips, and even though Rainn stood with her heels in the soft earth, the
censored
was like a taste of heaven. When they went back into the kitchen, the washing up had not been touched, and the 3 sat around the table as seriously as if it were at Yalta. But neither Rainn nor Jack seemed to notice. Jack slapped John on the back. "Have a good day in the office tomorrow," he said. Then he turned to Rainn and touched her waist. "I'll pick you up tomorrow at 8, he told her. "Goodbye everyone," he said and saw himself out. Chapter 5. Jack picked her up the following night. Tactfully, he drove the Mercedes instead of the car he had knocked her down with. When Rainn questioned this, he laughed. "You notice a lot," he said. "Probably more than you might think," said Rainn. "I also notice that this car smells of a perfume that isn't mine. I imagine you get it valeted regularly, so I suppose Chelsea has been riding with you recently." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Someone's been reading you the newspapers. And not the good ones either." "I take it that's a yes then." Jack drove west through the London evening traffic. "I am single. I like dining in fine restaurants, and I like the company of beautiful women. Tonight, I am dining with you. Tonight, Rainn, there is no one in the world I would rather be with." He glanced at Rainn, who appeared to be carefully considering his words. "I'm saying this sincerely," he pressed. "I want to be completely honest with you. Do you understand?" Rainn nodded. "I understand," she said, "and I appreciate it." They drove through a tunnel and the lights moved up and over her face, and Jack wondered if she sensed any of it, or whether it was all endless darkness. "And tomorrow night when I'm not with you," asked Rainn, "what will you want to do tomorrow night?" "Another restaurant," said Jack. "Even if our restaurant is good?" asked Rainn. "Especially if our restaurant is good," said Jack. "I'd be worried it wouldn't be as good the next time." "I see," said Rainn. "And do you think of women the same way you think of restaurants?" "Up to now." As they drove home, Rainn waited for Jack to change gear and lightly laid her hand on his. "Are you all right?" he asked. "More than all right," she said. "It was a lovely evening." "Thank you." "I'm glad you had a good time," he said. "I enjoyed it too." "You won't be going to that restaurant again?" "No," he said, "not for a long time." "It was an amazing meal," said Rainn, turning her head as if she were looking out at the lights of London flicking past them. "It was good," agreed Jack. "But it's always difficult to separate the food from the company." "It was a good conversation. I haven't felt so relaxed in another person's company for—" Jack paused to turn off the main street. "Maybe forever," he said. They had pulled into Rainn Street and Jack stopped outside her house. "Because I enjoyed your company so much, and it was such a fantastic evening," said Jack, slowly reaching to the back seat. "I thought I'd give you a little token of my—" Rainn reached over and put her finger over his lips. "If you are going to give me a gift, thanks but no thanks. There's only so much perfume or jewelry I can wear." "Rainn, it's only a—" Jack began to protest. Rainn had already opened the door and was stepping out. "If you enjoyed the evening so much, we can do it again. Pick me up the same time tomorrow." "Rainn," said Jack, "wait a second. Definitely another time, but tomorrow I'm busy." Rainn nodded. "I see. Am I outside my house?" she asked. "Yes, but let me help you." It was too late. Rainn had slammed the door and was opening the gate in front of her house. The next morning Jack called her. "Is the same time tonight okay?" he asked. "That's perfect," she said. They went out each night that week. Jack was amazed to find that each date was better than the last. On the Friday, he leaned over in the car and
censored
her. When she
censored
him back, he could sense the yearning in her lips. He wanted to take her home with him right then, but he managed to control himself. "Another lovely evening," he said, smiling. "It was amazing," agreed Rainn. "I love spending time with you." "This weekend," he said, raising an eyebrow, "maybe we can see more of each other." Rainn laughed. "I think I know what you mean. Come here tomorrow. For dinner. Yvonne and I want to cook for you." "There's no need to cook," offered Jack. "Come to my place. I can have a restaurant prepare us something." "No," said Rainn firmly, laying a hand on his wrist. I want to cook for you. Yvonne wants to meet you again. Jack accepted
censored,
her again and got out of the car to escort her to her door where he
censored,
her once more. Until tomorrow, he said. He arrived a little early with yet more flowers and a bottle of champagne. Jack sat in the small kitchen and watched the sisters cooking. Rainn chatted away happily. Every now and again Yvonne would subtly direct or guide her away from a hot pan. I hope you are hungry, Rainn said. Starving, said Jack, watching the curve of her body beneath her long dress. I'm afraid this will be a bit of a come down from your fancy, high-class restaurants, interjected Yvonne. Nonsense, said Jack. You can't beat home cooking. Besides, this smells incredible. Rainn leaned over the worktop. Jack eyed the line of underwear as it pressed against the soft fabric of her dress. I can't wait to taste it. When it was nearly ready, John arrived. Jack smiled and slapped him on the shoulder. Shall we open the champagne? He asked. Let's do it, giggled Rainn. Jack gave Rainn the bottle, and she held it in her hand, stroking it, getting a feel for the shape. I've never had real champagne before, she said. Gosh, it's big. Methuselah, explained Jack. It's not a bad one, I think, he said modestly. You need to remove the foil. Rainn slowly peeled away the foil bit by bit, until the slender neck of the bottle was
censored
and exposed. I think I'll leave the last bit to you, she said and handed the bottle back. Jack held the bottle firmly between his muscular thighs and slowly turned the corkscrew. It turned slowly, the bottle seemed to tremble with the pressure building up inside. Do you need any help? Asked Yvonne. Nearly there, said Jack. I'm scared, squealed Rainn, laughing and pulling back. Suddenly, the cork was released with an almighty bang. It flew across the kitchen, narrowly missing Rainn's head, and pinged against a pan hanging on the wall as if it were a gong. A flume of foam curved from the lip of the bottle and gushed up from between Jack's thighs towards Rainn. There was a moment of stunned silence, then Rainn screamed and everyone laughed. What the hell happened? Asked Rainn, looking bewildered. Jack took a cloth and was wiping away the bubbles that were foaming white against Rainn's black dress. I'm sorry, he said. It's fine, Jack, don't worry, Yvonne said. Wow, said Rainn, holding a hand over her mouth. Now, I think I need a drink. Jack had brought a set of champagne flutes, and he poured out the glasses. Cheers, he said, and they all raised a toast. Wow, said Yvonne. This is some champagne. It really is, nodded John. It's not too bad, is it? Said Jack, as if he harbored some doubts. Probably when you drink it every day, it doesn't quite seem so amazing, mocked John. You probably get used to it. Oh, I don't drink it every day, said Jack, making it clear that there may just be days when he only drinks wine. Well, I could certainly get used to this, sighed Rainn. It's heavenly. They sat down and ate dinner. Despite Yvonne and Rainn's attempts to play it down, it was a very good meal with Jack and John both enthusiastic with their praise. I enjoy cooking, explained Rainn, but I'm sure I'm not very good at it. You're very modest, said John. Either very modest or you honestly have no idea how exceptional you are, said Jack. Exceptional at many things and in many ways. Rainn blushed. Well, if you will excuse me a moment, I shall have to go and clean myself up after all the cooking and eating. She rose from the table and Yvonne rose with her. My makeup assistant will come with me, said Rainn, laughing. You're in showbiz, Jack, you know how it is. Of course, said Jack, standing politely. I have one myself. When the sisters had left, he sat down. More champagne? He asked John. A little, said John. When Jack had placed down the bottle, John asked, What are you playing at? I'm sorry, said Jack, genuinely surprised. What's your game with Rainn? Jack turned his chair so that he was facing John. There's no game, he said. I like her and I want to spend time with her. And when you get bored, said John, what happens then? Who says I will get bored? You always get bored, said John. That's the way you are. And who the hell are you to tell me about what person I am? It's clear, said John. You are a thrill seeker. You chase one high after another. Women, alcohol, drugs, it doesn't matter. And when you are bored of one thing, you drop it and move on to the next. You don't know what you are talking about. Can't you see this is different? I'm sure it always starts off as different, said John. But it always ends the same way, with you hurting someone, yet you move on without a care in the world. Jack shook his head. You're making a fool of yourself. I don't know what thrill you find in Rainn. Perhaps it's because she's so trusting. Perhaps it's because she's blind. There's something there that's turning you on. But one day soon you'll get bored of her and you'll drop her like the rest. I won't, said Jack. You will, John corrected him. And it won't matter much to you, but it will destroy her. She can't see it. That's the tragedy. And you're going to make her see it, are you? Said John. If I have to. John jutted out his chin. And who appointed you Rainn's guardian? Who said you have to decide what's good for her? As if she were a teenager. I'm her friend, said John. Jack looked at him and laughed. You're in love with her, aren't you? That's what this is all about. You're in love with her, and you've never had the balls to tell her. And now you've lost her, you're behaving like a jealous little child. Jack threw his head back. Thank God you've lost her. Rainn deserves a lot better than you. Jack sipped his wine while John turned red with rage. Wonder why you've never told her. Just don't have the balls, I expect. Scared of rejection. Jack slapped his hand against the kitchen table. No, I've got it, he said. I know what it was. You always banked on her never finding another man. Because she was blind, you thought she would always be there for you while you were free to go off and play the field. Isn't that right? You were out having a good time, while all the time you had the one woman you really loved as a backup. Jack raised his glass of champagne. That's it, isn't it? Jesus Christ, what a loser. Well, John, you've really messed this up, because guess what? I'm not going to hand Rainn back to you. Not ever. Chapter 6. The following day, Jack picked Rainn up early. Is there a problem between you and John? She asked as he got into the car. Of course not, said Jack. He pulled out into the London traffic that was moving slowly with no more urgency than was appropriate on a Sunday morning. I just sensed a strange atmosphere last night. Jack patted her knee in a friendly way. You know there's no one who is more in awe of your senses than I, but in this case they're a little off. They drove along the tree-lined streets of the suburbs, and the sunlight flitted through the car windscreen. Often Jack glanced at Rainn's face and his censored played on his lips. He was still hungry. But he would have to be patient. He would play the long game. A good day for a walk, he said. Perhaps we could go to the common. I'd like that, said Rainn. They walked along the edge of the common, chatting as dog walkers and joggers went past. Jack walked with his arm in hers. He could feel her body move beside him, and sense the strength of her back in her upright posture. He felt the curve of her waist, and the length of her muscles that curved down her slim thighs. Rainn felt very much alive, and asked Jack to describe the things she could hear and smell. He told her about the clumps of narcissi in the verge, and the lilac coming into flower. He told her about the swans on the pond, and the sparrows that hopped on the path in front of them. They sat on a bench, and Rainn told him how she imagined the world. It's difficult to explain, she said. No, said Jack, he put his arm around her. I think I understand. I'm not sure it's possible, she said. But it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you try. She smiled at him, and he delicately took her chin and turned it towards him. They censored. Come to my place, he said. It's time I saw you in it. Rainn laughed. I'd like to. You can give me a guided tour. Chapter 7. Rainn listened to the car wheels roll over the gravel of the driveway for quite a distance. You have a big garden, she guessed. Yes, said Jack, surprised, as if he had never noticed it before. I suppose I do. Do you spend a lot of time gardening? Jack laughed. Not a lot. So you have a gardener? Of course. Jack led her up the steps to the front door, and she listened very carefully as he opened it, and they walked into the vast hall. "The house is big too," she said. The door closed behind them, and Rainn listened to the echo. "You must have a cleaner." "Correct," said Jack. "Is she here today?" "No, just you and I." Rainn sniffed the air. "It's clean," she said. "Your cleaner does a good job. But there's not much furniture. I can tell that much." "I like to keep it minimalist," he said and took her arm. "Let me show you around." Rainn's heels clicked on the floor. "No carpets," she said. "Is it marble?" "That's right. There's a few throws, a couple of rugs, for when I want to, relax." They toured around the ground floor, Rainn making approving comments. "I can't believe how big it is," she said. Jack smiled. "It's probably too much for one person." He gazed at the curve of her chin, and traced the line down her neck and between the buttons of her blouse. Rainn smiled. "What?" she said. "What is it?" "Oh, nothing," said Jack. "Let me show you upstairs." He guided her up the steps with one hand on her back. "A spiral staircase," said Rainn. "I feel like a princess." "You look like one too." He took her into the two smaller bedrooms, and she asked him to describe the furniture, as she held onto the curtains and stroked her hand over the bedding. "And this is my bedroom," he said and ushered her in. He watched her as she walked around, carefully touching the objects she came across. He enjoyed watching her body move. It was a great pleasure, he realized, to watch her like this, without making her feel uncomfortable under his gaze. "It's a lovely room," she said. "What's this?" she asked as her hand came across a door handle. "Bathroom," said Jack. "Take a walk inside." Rainn smiled and opened the door. "Ooh," he heard her say, "is this a hot tub?" Jack moved to the doorway and looked at her bending over with her hands stretched, searching out the sides of the tub. There was something
censored
about watching her under the cold, clinical lights of the bathroom. "It certainly is," he said. "It's huge," she exclaimed. "If I had one of these, I would be in it every day." "I hardly ever use it," he lied. Rainn turned to face him as he looked her up and down. He then looked at the reflection of her back in the mirror. She was smiling at him, and he stared blatantly at her pert
censored
that appeared hard beneath her flimsy blouse. "Well, that's the guided tour," he said. "Thank you," Rainn said brightly. "It's a great place. I'm glad I got to experience it." Jack said nothing. They could just hear his breathing echoing in the bathroom. He wanted to touch her or touch himself. He could do that, and she wouldn't even know. He shook his head to get the thought out of his mind. "Everything okay?" asked Rainn. God, she was so innocent, Jack thought to himself. She couldn't stay that way. "Sure," he said. "There's a lovely breeze from the bedroom window. It faces right across the common, and you can smell the wildflowers. Come with me." Chapter 8. Jack took Rainn's hand and led her from the bathroom. He positioned her by the window and described the view to her. "It's spring," she said. "It must be very green." "It is," he said. Jack sat on the bed and watched her. She was stroking the curtains. "What's this?" she asked. Jack laughed. "Just the curtain tie back." "And this?" She was holding the thickly knotted tassel that hung down, almost caressing it, and something in Jack broke. "Rainn," he said very seriously. "You say stop and I will stop. I promise. Anything else I will ignore." Rainn frowned and turned towards the window, as if he were describing something out across the common. "What do you mean?" she asked. He stood up and moved behind her. "Here," he said and took her two slender wrists. She gave them to him as he knew she would. Rapidly he pulled out the tie back and wrapped it tightly round her wrists, binding them together. Rainn gasped. "What are you doing?" she asked. But Jack was not for speaking anymore. He pulled down the tassel and looped it around Rainn's waist so he could hear the air escape from her. He twisted it behind her back and held it firmly in his clenched fist. "Jack, no," she said and twisted round. In a flash, Jack swung his hand and she felt the sting of his large palm connecting sharply with her ass. Rainn stopped dead still, breathing sharply.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
The spoke little after it was over. Rainn showered and Jack ordered a pizza. They ate it in the too-clean kitchen with the radio on. Jack talked about his job and relayed some anecdotes about celebrities he thought she might know. But he spoke without real interest and picked at his food. There seemed little else to do that day, so Jack suggested he take her home and Rainn agreed. She was silent in the car, and Jack was absorbed in his own thoughts. Rainn was scared. Scared because she enjoyed it. Scared because she wanted to do it again as soon as possible. How could this be? She had never thought of herself as this person, and her base animal
Censored.
disturbed her. How could she face up to the person she was? Worse still, how could she present herself to others knowing she felt like this? But she most worried about how Jack would see her. It made no sense in one way, as he had initiated it. But had it not been a test? He had given her the option to stop, and she had gone through with it. And if he hadn't been expecting her to stop, what did he think of her now? She had assumed it was her good character he longed for, but was it all only this? Was she now just like all his other women, only in his life for the thrill of rough?
Censored.
When they got back to her house, she gave him a quick peck on the cheek and said goodbye. Chapter 9. When Jack got home, he opened a bottle of wine and slumped down in the sofa. Very soon he was on the harder stuff. "Well, Jack, you imbecile," he said to himself, the words filling the empty house. "Well done." He raised the glass to the image of himself in the mirror. "Well done," he repeated. "You took the one innocent sweet thing in your life, the one thing that hadn't all gone to shit, and you defiled it." He walked around the house as if in conversation with someone unseen. "The one thing that might have saved you, and you effed her. Couldn't help yourself, could you?" He put the glass down on a table and wiped his brow. "And what will she think of you now? She think you are a freak. A dirty freak." Jack poured himself another drink. "And she'd be right about that. Because that's what you are." He picked up his phone and dialed. "Well," he said, "you're a freak, might as well hang out with the freaks." "Talking to yourself, stranger?" "Chelsea," Jack said. "How's my freaky pie? How's your new girlfriend?" Jack laughed. "You're kidding, aren't you? Didn't I tell you, it was just some PR thing? You said taking flowers to the hospital. I didn't realize you had to bag her too. Come on. Seriously? Can you imagine me banging that sack of spuds? You know you're the one who's got what I need." "Well, Jackie boy, I'm afraid things move on." "Oh shit," said Jack. "You're not out with some half-wit footballer, are you? You know he'll only get you home so you can see who's got the best leg waxing." Chelsea laughed. "He is kind of dull. But I'm not sure what you've got to offer me anymore. Ask your boyfriend what a sugarloaf cabochon sapphire is. Don't bother, he won't know. But there's one waiting for you here." "Interesting. Anything else?" "Some first-class cocaine and outrageously good."
Censored.
"Hop in a taxi." Jack put down the phone and took another gulp of his drink. It was only 20 minutes before Chelsea rang the doorbell. She must really want that sapphire, thought Jack, and climbed down to his cellar for a bottle of champagne. It was polite of her to ring when she could have just let herself in. Still, she wasn't a bad girl, not a bad girl at all. When he came back up, she was standing in the kitchen. Damn, thought Jack, she looked good. She looked like a young woman should. "How do you keep your skin looking so good?" he asked for no reason. "Clean living." "Clean living," repeated Jack, swaying slightly. "What's that?" Chelsea laughed like honey. "You're drunk," she said. "Good." She looked at the bottle. "I hope that's good champagne." "What do you know about champagne?" he asked. "What do you know?" "A little, but if it's more than the person I'm talking to, I can pretend that it's a lot." "I normally judge a bottle by its price," said Chelsea. Jack nodded. "I expect you do. So how much did that cost you?" Jack lifted the bottle and gazed unsteadily at the label. 4 figures. Most probably. Chelsea sniffed. It will do. Jack opened the bottle and took 2 glasses from a cupboard, and they sat on stools by the breakfast bars. Chelsea did her makeup, for no reason that Jack could possibly see. Nice legs, said Jack. Thanks. Very strong thigh muscles. Good for gripping. He poured the champagne. Cheers. Cheers, said Chelsea, still doing her makeup. Jack drank the champagne. It was very good. Or he imagined it was very good. It was difficult to tell after all that he had drunk. So he said, "How are you?" "What?" said Chelsea, putting down her mirror. "How are you?" She looked at him as if he were speaking Sanskrit. "I've been out to a sushi restaurant with a guy who would have been happier eating fried chicken in a hot tub. But he bought me a ring." She raised a finger to show Jack the ring. "Bit gaudy, I know. We got photographed leaving together. So I suppose that's all right." "Excellent," said Jack. "And now I'm here and you're going to give me a sapphire and some Coke, and we'll have
Censored.
the Jack way. That's how I am." They looked at each other for a moment, and she looked suddenly very young to him, and he wondered if he looked the same to her. "The Jack way," he said. "You know, the way you like it. And you like it too." She smiled and took a sip of her wine. "You've got a lot of energy for busy man." "You bet I have," he winked. "And some moves?" "I've got some tricks," he acknowledged, nodding quite seriously. "We dogs have them." "Just the tricks," said Chelsea. "I don't want the ticks." "And the drugs, of course," said Jack. Chelsea drank some champagne. "Yes," she agreed. "Maybe the best drugs." Jack stroked his chin thoughtfully. It was true, he got good Charlie. "Are we going to break it out then?" asked Chelsea, getting visibly anxious. "Champagne first," said Jack, raising his glass, "then Coke." "Then?"
Censored.
Jack nodded. "Things in the correct order," he said. "That's the secret to living a good life." "On here?" asked Chelsea, patting the breakfast bar. "Yes," said Jack. "I don't see why not." When Jack awoke, he found himself on the sofa. He could hear Chelsea moving around. He failed to get himself to a standing position until the taxi was waiting outside with the horn blaring. Chelsea rushed out of the door and yelled something to him as she went. Jack watched her shimmy to the taxi. "God damn," he thought. She was good. He couldn't live without her, that was the truth. He had been stupid to try. He noticed Chelsea had taken the sapphire, and there seemed to be some cash missing from his wallet. Well, he wouldn't miss it too much. Jack padded to the kitchen and found an aspirin. Standing by the kitchen window, his thoughts turned to Rainn. He would have to leave her. Completely. He knew that. But still. Would it do any harm to see her just one more time? Chapter 10. Jack picked up the phone and as he expected, it went straight to answer phone. "Hi Rainn," he said, trying to sound upbeat. "It's Jack. Hope you are doing well. I'm in central London, filming on location. Anyway, I've got a suite in the Shard. Ever been there? Wow. It's an amazing view. Feels like you can see the whole of London from here. It would be nice to describe it for you. I could send a taxi, if you liked. Well, anyway, it would be nice to see you again." Jack ended the call, as the traffic around him began to move. Shit, he thought, maybe she would hear he had called from his car. He hadn't thought of that. She probably would as well, with her crazy bat ears. Much to his surprise, he received an SMS not long later. "I will be going into Central, with my sister. Yes, it would be nice to visit the Shard. And to meet you. We will be there at 2. Great, he thought. It might be worth paying for a room after all. Jack waited for them in lobby of the hotel. He got himself a whiskey to calm his nerves, even though he wasn't sure what he was nervous about. Every time the lift doors opened, he glanced up. When Rainn and Yvonne eventually appeared, he felt almost dizzy. Jesus, Jack, get a grip, he told himself. He walked over to them and
censored
them both and gave Rainn a hug. They chatted about how busy London was, and how it was difficult to get anywhere these days. Yvonne suddenly announced, "Well, I'll leave you two to it. Let you have a nice talk." Yes, a nice talk, thought Jack as they traveled in the lift up the endless floors. How was that nice talk going to go? "So Rainn, sorry about the rough, violent
censored
I subjected you to the other day. I realize that's ruined the way we see each other, and spoiled the very lovely thing we have. However, it seems I have an unhealthily addictive personality, and I coped with what happened between us by getting drunk and taking drugs with my cynical gold-digger girlfriend." They kept going up as London scrolled behind them. "It's a long way," said Rainn. "My stomach feels like it's down near my feet." Jack led her to the hotel room door and fumbled a little with the lock. He still had no idea what he was going to say or how he was going to play this. He would fix himself a drink first. That seemed like the best plan of action. The room's got a full-length window. Not much chance of anyone being able to look in at this height. Unless it's an airliner. It's incredible, really. You can see for miles. "I can see for miles," said Rainn sharply. "I'm sorry," said Jack. "What I meant was—" But he didn't have chance to finish his sentence because Rainn had taken his arm from her back and twisted it sharply down. With her other hand, she had pushed him back against the gold glass of the window. Jack was quite taken by surprise, and his back thudded against the window, half a mile above the London streets.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
They lay on the carpet for a long time, listening to each other's breathing. Then it came upon them, the slow realization that what they had done was not compatible with the people they were outside the moment. The conversation was stilted, and both of them felt awkward. Neither wanted to stay in the place where it had happened. Jack went to the bathroom while Rainn gathered her things. He washed his face. He knew what he had to do. "I have a girlfriend," he said, "and I don't think I can leave her." He waited to see what Rainn would say. She said nothing. "I have feelings for you, but I hate to do this with you when I know it's not right." "No," said Rainn calmly. "You should not." Jack watched her carefully. He could see the emotion she tried to contain, betrayed by the slight shaking of her shoulders. "That's the way it is," he said, firmly and with no hint of emotion. "I'm sorry," he said again. "There's no need to apologize," said Rainn. "There's no need to say any more. Please don't come with me. I will see myself out. The only way from here is down." Jack opened the door for her, and watched her as she lightly touched her fingers against the walls of the corridor, striding purposefully to the lift. He was relieved that she had not seen the tears he had been crying. Chapter 11. A few months later. It was a beautiful morning, and Rainn was listening to the drops of rain splashing on her windowsill. Her mind, however, was focused on a piece that they were going to perform that night. She remembered a fellow violinist once told her that she had an advantage in being blind. She would never have to deal with stage fright. She only smiled at him, not revealing that for her there was double the pressure. She had to picture how her audience looked, and would only know their approval once they applauded for her at the end of the piece. She could hear distant footsteps approaching the room, and knew that it was Margaret. Her usual honey lemon scent filled the room as she tapped lightly on the door. "Hello, dear," she called. "Have you had lunch?" Rainn decided not to answer the question, as she knew that either way she would get a lecture. "You don't have to answer that," she went on, just as Rainn had suspected. "I've been to the kitchen and I feel insulted." "Come on, Margaret, your cooking isn't that bad," Rainn defended herself, a wicked grin plastered on her face. "Joke's on you, I had takeout delivered," Margaret retorted. Rainn heard her pull up a chair. From the closeness of her scent, Rainn knew that Margaret was seated next to her. "You know, you have to eat something," Margaret began to lecture. I know," Rainn nodded as she got to her feet and walked out of the room. She could feel Margaret follow her closely, and knew that she was going to take it upon herself to monitor her meal. Rainn knew her way around the house now. Margaret had ensured that all furniture was well arranged and easily accessible when Rainn informed her that she was coming over. She got to the kitchen, and from the way Margaret whisked past her, Rainn knew Margaret was going to serve her food. "Just have a seat, I will warm it up for you," Margaret said and went about the kitchen. Rainn sat quietly and patiently as she heard the familiar clatter of plates and knives. Her cell phone vibrated a pattern in her hand, and she simply ignored it. "Jack again?" Margaret asked after watching Rainn ignore her cell phone. "Yes. I have to hand it to him. The guy is relentless," Margaret said, and placed a plate in front of Rainn. "Do you want some soda with that?" "Yes, please." Rainn picked up her fork and slowly began to nibble and pick on her food. She had not realized how hungry she was until she started chewing. She could feel the rumblings in her stomach scramble for the chunks of food that she was throwing its way. Margaret, on the other hand, wondered whether she should touch on the subject of Jack. She watched Rainn, who went on to eat as Margaret pondered the thought. "Go ahead, ask the question," Rainn said as she went on to chew and sip on some soda. "I hate it when you do that," Margaret said. "Hate what?" "How you know that I am burning to ask you a question?" Margaret asked. "I could feel it." "I do not want to get into that right now," Margaret chuckled. "So what's the question?" "Why are you ignoring him?" Margaret asked, as she curiously looked in Rainn's direction. She knew that Rainn was blind, but also knew that she could feel her looking her way. "It's nothing personal, I just need to concentrate on me right now," Rainn replied, and continued to nibble and play around with her food for Margaret's sake. She paused and was about to put her plate aside, before she realized that Margaret was still looking at her. "What else is on your mind?" Margaret asked in a concerned tone. She had watched Rainn for the past 2 days, and had noticed that she had been slightly distracted. "I need to be my best tonight," she let out, and Margaret could detect the frustration in her voice. She watched as Rainn let her fork drop to her plate, and it made a loud clanging sound throughout the dining room. "Take it easy," Margaret said to her. She had her arm around Rainn in a minute, holding her in a tight embrace. "You are too hard on yourself," Margaret said as she rubbed her hand on Rainn's back comfortingly. "I watch you, you hardly eat or sleep. You're in overdrive." Rainn could not help it as the tears streamed down her cheeks. She wiped them with the back of her hand and stifled a sob. "You'll be fine," Margaret went on to say, but did not stop Rainn from letting her feelings out. "I need to be perfect," Rainn said emotionally as she again wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "You should hear yourself play, my dear. I think you transcend perfection," Margaret cooed as she held Rainn ever closer. "You are truly a wonderful cousin," Rainn replied as let her head rest on Margaret's shoulder. "I know I am," she replied smartly. "Now I want you to eat your food. I wouldn't want to see you faint on stage in front of 1,000+ people." "That would be such a sight," Rainn replied as she sat up and took the fork in her hand. She picked through her food and started to nibble into it again. "I can almost see the headlines now," she went on to say in between mouthfuls. "Blind girl faints in the middle of a performance." "That's not supposed to be funny," Margaret replied, albeit her manner suggested otherwise. "I shouldn't be laughing this hard at such a scenario." The two women went on to make light of Rainn fainting in the middle of her performance, as Margaret secretly monitored her eating. She felt relieved when she saw that Rainn had cleared her plate, giving her a thumbs up. "Now you can go back to practice with more energy," Margaret said, and watched as her cousin slowly got to her feet and walked out of the room. She slightly shook her head when she thought of her and Jack, and decided that she was probably doing her a favor by hiding the letters. Rainn had been dealt a hand in life, and a straining relationship would not really work for her at that time. Chapter 12. Jack sat on the floor, cell phone in hand, and wondered what to do next. He waited and hoped for it to ring, as he stared at his surroundings at nothing in particular. He was camped at Rainn's door outside the empty house, and had decided not to move. It was a chilly day, and he hugged his coat tightly to his
Censored.
as he again threw a glance at his surroundings. He thought of the many times he had tried to reach out to her, and felt even more frustrated. He had spent the past few months calling her and trying to appease her with gifts and flowers, but he would never get any response from her. No phone call, email, text, or even letter. The thought of rejection and the feeling of frustration made Jack reach into his pocket and pull out a flask. He took a long gulp from it and welcomed the ever-familiar feel of burning liquor on his throat. He shut his eyes tight, again looking around at his surroundings. He noticed that the neighbors had started looking at him weirdly, but he simply did not care. Jack got to his feet when he remembered that if the press were to take a snapshot of him drinking at the front of Rainn's door, she would get into trouble. He walked over to the plant that was perched next to the front door and began fishing through it for a key. He let out a victorious yelp when he finally circled his palm around it. Jack then staggered slightly to the door and turned it open. He was greeted by the familiar scent that he had gotten used to, and he could feel his heart melt at the memory of it. He closed the door behind him quietly and took a few steps around the apartment. His footsteps echoed throughout the house as the loneliness of the place acknowledged the human presence that had just intruded. The dust on the furniture and the few cobwebs that had begun forming on the walls confirmed the fact that Rainn had not been at the house for quite some time. He wondered what to do and kept on walking around the house. He could hear distant nostalgic laughter as he recalled the good times that they had together in that apartment. Jack placed his left hand on his
censored
and let out a resigned sigh. He sat down on the floor in a lump and again reached out for the flask from the inner pocket of his jacket. "Be still, my heart," he sighed as he again looked around the room, before taking a longer gulp from it, letting his head rest on the wall that was behind him. His phone rung a few times, and he ignored all the calls. He eventually decided to switch it off and sat in silence, deep in thought. He buried his head in the palm of his hands for a minute before looking up and combing his right hand through his hair. He was so engrossed in his own concerns that he didn't hear the door open or realize that he was no longer alone until Rainn spoke up. "How did you get in?" she demanded curtly as she stood over Jack, facing him. Jack felt a mixture of both excitement and shock when he heard Rainn's voice. He looked up her and realized how much he had missed her. She was looking particularly lovely. He especially loved how the low-cut fitted blue dress hugged her body. "I let myself in," Jack answered eventually, after letting his eyes hungrily feed on Rainn's lovely body. "I can see that, but why? What do you want?" Rainn went on to inquire in the same tone. "I have been trying to call you." "I know, I've been busy," Rainn replied and started walking towards the living room to sit on the sofa. She was well aware that he was closely behind her and loved how his scent overwhelmed the room. He sat on the sofa next to her, and Rainn could feel the alcohol stench in his breath. "You've been drinking," she stated. "Yes, I have." Rainn could think of a few choice words to say to him at that moment, but knew they would all lead to an argument with him, and she decided to remain silent. "So how have you been?" Jack asked as he tried to lift the awkwardness from the room. "I've been well," Rainn answered. She really wanted to provoke him by saying a few things about his drinking, but decided not to. Hearing his voice was soothing, and she didn't want to ruin the moment with an argument. "What about you? What else have you been up to, other than slowly ruining your liver?" Rainn asked, and was sure that Jack got the disapproving tone in her question. "Nothing much. I was working on a movie in New York." "New York?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me you were in New York?" "You knew I was performing there and staying at Margaret's," Rainn complained. She wasn't really sure whether she actually had wanted to see him, especially after avoiding his phone calls. "Well, if you would have picked up your phone, you would have known that I was also in New York," Jack answered smartly. "You should have tried harder," Rainn said this as she slammed a fist on her knee to prove a point. "You should have come over to see me at Margaret's." "I did." "You did?" "Yes, several times," Jack answered and watched as Rainn's eyebrow twitched at the mention of these words. "How come I was never informed that you came?" Rainn asked in a confused tone. "Margaret said that you did not want to see me, and that you needed some space to clear your head from all that was going on in your life," Jack stated before watching Rainn's disturbed expression and went on, she said you didn't need any distractions. Rainn went silent and pondered those words for a minute longer. She intertwined her palms and let her head bend low when she heard this. It indeed sounded like something that Margaret would say, and she knew that she was only looking out for her. She, however, felt slightly disappointed for meddling into her business. Jack seized the opportunity, placing a comforting arm on her shoulder. He waited for her to resist and pulled her closer when she didn't. "I missed you," he whispered as he ran his hands through her hair and let her head rest easily on his shoulder. "I missed you too," Rainn replied. She felt vulnerable at that point, but simply did not care. She had sincerely missed him. New York had been a great distraction for her, but she still had a deep longing for him. She let him have his way with her, and did not resist when he lifted her chin and engaged her in a long, passionate,
censored.
The taste of him mixed with the stench of liquor in his mouth was a bit strange for Rainn, but was also a turn-on in its own twisted way. She responded by placing her hands on his shoulders and pulling him closer to him. She loved how masculine he felt, and loved the feel of his broad shoulders in her arms. Without warning, Rainn pulled back and got to her feet. "What's wrong?" Jack asked in a concerned voice, as he stood behind her and circled his arms around her tiny waist. Rainn leaned on him, loving the masculine feel of his body as she did so. She loved how his rugged beard caressed her neck, and enjoyed the feel of manliness that came with his embrace. "I don't know if I can do this again," Rainn said as she let out a long sigh. "Why not?" Jack asked. He had a pleading and desperate tone in his voice, and Rainn could tell that he really wanted to make things work this time. "I need to concentrate on me now. Relationships are just too straining," Rainn answered and pulled out of his embrace. She walked a few steps away from him, but could still feel his gaze fixated on her. "I don't think that's the reason," Jack said as he held her in a tight embrace. "I think you're scared." Rainn took a moment to feel his breath on her ear, his grip on her arm and the tone in his voice. She felt assured and hated how he was spot on, moreover hating how well he knew her. "Let's move in together," Jack suggested out of the blue. He saw how Rainn literally froze from these words, and was ready to give her more reasons to support his statement, but stopped when he saw the corners of her mouth turn up. He clenched his fist and threw it in midair as a sign of joy and disbelief. "I haven't agreed yet, you know, don't start rejoicing," Rainn said as she turned and faced him. Her head lay on his shoulder carelessly, and he responded by rubbing her back up and down. Rainn then reached up to him and planted a long wet,
censored,
on his lips as she circled her hands on his neck. "Is that a yes?" Jack asked, after pulling away from their embrace slightly. "It's a maybe," Rainn answered cheekily. "What do I have to do to get a yes?" "Take me out to dinner, buy me a bouquet of roses and some ice cream," she answered, and Jack loved the sweet shy smile that she displayed when she said all these. "Anything for you, my love." Chapter 13. It had been a few weeks since Jack had asked to Rainn move in with him. Rainn had tried to ignore the subject, but he somehow kept bringing it up in a conversation. She was waiting on him to show up and make her dinner that day in her apartment, so she sat on the living room sofa reading a book. She wasn't really concentrating on it. Her mind kept thinking about Jack and when he would show up. She pressed the audio clock that was in the living room and listened keenly to it. "The time now is 8:45 p.m., the automated voice rang through the empty apartment, and Rainn smiled when she thought of how she had made it ring exactly 2 minutes before. Jack was only 15 minutes away, and her insides began to churn at the thought of him. She could already picture his lovely woody scent, and the rugged beard that was carelessly distributed on his face. She thought of his warm embrace, and the feel of his masculinity on her body. She thought of the way he always played with her,
censored,
whenever they made out, and the way he would let her head rest on his,
censored,
every time they were done making love and fulfilling each other's.
Censored.
Her thoughts were interrupted when she heard the distant footsteps approach her door, and Jack turning the doorknob. She listened keenly to him as he took off his shoes and walked on bare feet to the living room. "Hello, beautiful," he announced. Rainn could hear him carrying a handful of bags, and guessed they were groceries. She listened as he walked over to her and placed a light peck on her left cheek. Hello, she answered. You're early, she added as she listened to him walk over to the kitchen counter. I decided to show up early. God knows I have other plans with you later in the night, Jack answered, and Rainn could detect the innuendo behind those words. She let out a slight giggle and placed her book aside as she listened to what Jack was doing in the kitchen. What are you looking for? She asked. The chopping board. Top shelf to your right, Rainn answered and listened as Jack opened the cabinet door and pulled out what he needed. Rainn's kitchen was always organized and immaculately arranged. That was the only way that she could go about it without bumping into things and hurting herself. What are you making? She went on to ask as the whiff of red pepper got to her nostrils. Stuffed peppers, Jack answered. Wine? Yes, please. Jack walked over to where Rainn was comfortably seated with a glass of wine in hand. He gave it to Rainn, who was waiting patiently for him, and watched as she took a sip from it. Smooth, right? He asked as he saw how her face lit up from the taste of the wine. Yes, it is, she smiled after letting the wine caress her.
Censored.
And glide down her throat. Jack leaned in and placed a
Censored
on her lips, and Rainn detected the scent of gin on his breath. He waited for him to walk back to the kitchen counter, before mastering the courage to ask him about it. How much have you had to drink today? She asked bluntly. Not much. Rainn was not in the mood for a fight, and decided to change the angle of the conversation to something else as soon as she got the defensive response from Jack. Tell me about your first encounter with alcohol, Rainn asked. From the way he laughed at the question, she knew that it must be a hilarious story. Well, I was a young man trying to experiment with everything, Jack started, you name it. Pot, cocaine, cigarettes, ecstasy, speed, liquor, heroin. I think I tried out all the drugs that are known to mankind. Meth? Rainn asked curiously. Of course. Jack let out a nostalgic but half-amused chuckle when he said these words. But liquor became your poison? Rainn concluded. Unfortunately, it did. So how did you not get hooked on the rest of it? Rainn asked. She had now sat up, her back was still rested on the sofa. Various reasons actually, Jack admitted. For most of the drugs, I was a peddler and could not mix business with pleasure. Rainn placed a hand on her mouth to cover her shock, but it was a bit too late, Jack had noticed, and only let out another laugh. Relax, sweetie. I retired from that business a long time ago. Thank heavens, Rainn replied, so tell me the other reasons. Well, I watched a very close friend of mine waste away on meth, and decided not to go that way. Cocaine would make my head reel, and heroin made me throw up a lot. Jack explained. From that, it sounds like you love yourself too much to let yourself waste away on drugs. You could say that. Jack answered. He was now done chopping a few onions, and Rainn could tell that he was turning on the stove and placing a frying pan on it. She listened as the cooking oil slid around the pan, and sniffed as the smell of garlic and onions filled the room. So why do you think you are hooked on liquor? She asked after a few seconds. I think you could always quit if you wanted, it sounds like you're strong-willed enough. Jack took a minute to respond. Rainn could hear him play around with the spatula and a few other kitchen utensils. Well, he said before going silent again. He looked in Rainn's direction and wondered what to say to her. Rainn could tell that he was struggling to tell her something, and took a sip from her glass of wine. I am not that hooked on it, he said defensively. What was the longest time you went without indulging? Rainn asked. 2 years. Jack replied, not continuously though, I had a few occasional drinks. Really? Rainn was both impressed and shocked at this revelation. What triggered it? She asked. Rainn was all of a sudden very interested in what Jack had to say, and was overcome with curiosity. I don't know precisely, but I can guess, he answered. Rainn by now knew Jack well enough to know that he never liked being pushed, especially whenever he wanted to say was on his mind. She chose to remain silent and took another sip from her glass. She concluded that the contents of it were almost empty from its light weight. More wine? Jack asked and was swiftly at her side refilling her glass. What intentions do you have with me today, mister? Rainn asked and let out a naughty smile. Only heavenly intentions, my dear, Jack answered before walking back to the kitchen. He placed the wine on the kitchen counter and went about the cooking. I don't hear you having wine like me, she commented after Jack placed down the bottle. Rainn was trying to get back to the liquor topic without sounding persistent. I know what you're trying to do. Relax, I'm going to tell you the reason I drink a lot. Jack snapped and immediately wished he hadn't. Okay, was all Rainn could say. She took another sip of her wine and was slowly beginning to feel lightheaded. She had taken an early lunch, and the wine had started having effects on her. She thought of the night ahead with Jack and grew excited at the idea of it. Jack was almost done making dinner and began setting plates for both of them. He threw a quick glance at the sofa and loved how beautiful Rainn looked. She was effortlessly beautiful in anything she wore. She had her legs propped up on the sofa, and her hair fell back on her shoulders in a tangled mess. Jack guessed that she had not left the house that day from her comfortable loungewear. The glass of wine that she kept swinging from her hand to mouth was the icing on the cake. She did it with such elegance that all Jack could think of was how he would draw her closer to him and make sweet love to her. I have a dark past, he said out of the blue, and loved how Rainn leaned in closer and more attentive to what he had just said. She did not respond to him, and he did not expect her to. My parents abandoned me when I was a child, and I find my solace in liquor, Jack confessed. Have you ever tried going for therapy? Gin is my therapy, Rainn, he said and walked over to where she was comfortably seated, carrying the 2 plates in his hands. Rainn wondered and struggled with the right words to say, and Jack noticed. Go right ahead, tell me what it is that you're thinking, Jack said, and walked back to the kitchen to get cutlery. I think that you need therapy. Gin won't really work for you at the end of the day, Rainn said and went on to sip from her wine glass. She could feel the whiff of food play on her nostrils, and her stomach made a growling noise. I think so too, Jack agreed, but he was only doing it to try and end the conversation. So how would you describe your relationship with your parents? Rainn asked. She had already picked up her fork, and was only being loyal to her hunger at that time. Distant? With both parents? I don't blame my mother for her mistakes, Jack replied. Rainn could tell that he too had started eating from the way he was talking between mouthfuls. The food was delicious, and she liked how the different flavors all exploded in her mouth. Who do you blame for her mistakes? Rainn asked curiously. She never believed in the shifting of burden, and thought that every human being should be able to take their own responsibilities when need arose. My father. How so? He drove her insane, and she was never really stable to be the good parent that she ought to have been, Jack explained. Rainn detected a hint of deep and intense emotion in his words. You sound like you hate him? What followed after shocked Rainn. For a moment fear overwhelmed her and she held her breath. Jack slammed down his fist on the table hard. All she could hear was the cutlery clutter around the table. I don't hate him, he said after his fist had landed on the glass coffee table. I loathe him and maybe dislike him slightly. Rainn remained still. Her nostrils caught the metallic whiff of blood and she knew that Jack must have cut himself in his rage. You should disinfect that, she advised. I don't think this food is safe to eat now, he sighed and got the 2 plates from the table. Let me order some pizza right after I clean this. He walked to the kitchen, then headed over to the bathroom to look for disinfectant and a bandage. Rainn was left by herself guessing and confirming the usual sounds of water running and the scent of disinfectant. She was slightly disappointed about the meal, but was nevertheless happy about that revelation. She knew that it was a breakthrough for him, and it was something she could work on with him to help his healing process. This talk just made me have a grand idea, Jack exclaimed after walking into the living room and swiftly sitting next to Rainn. Let's hear it, Rainn answered. She felt a comfortable feeling sweep over her when he approached him and sat next to her. I would like you to meet my mother, he announced. Rainn could feel her blood freeze at the mention of this, and hugged herself in a tight embrace. Are you sure about that? Rainn asked, shocked and nearly dumbfounded. I am. Jack replied, I want her to meet the woman who makes me happy and smile. This is a huge step, you know. Yes, I know that, and I want to take it with you, nobody else, Jack replied. Rainn loved how he placed an assuring hand over hers, and she didn't worry anymore. Okay, she said before melting into his embrace and letting him have his way with her. She felt all her doubts melt away and her fears dissolve. She wondered what Jack's mother would be like. In her mind she painted a picture of an elderly woman who was as tall as Jack. Rainn pictured her stylish and fashionable with a pleasant personality. It will all be all right, she said to herself a few times. The words soothed her and made her hopeful. Chapter 14. Rainn sat in the restaurant with Jack by her side, her palms intertwined. She could feel a nervous sweat break on her forehead. Jack had reserved a booth for them, so they could have privacy with his mother. He placed a reassuring arm around Rainn and felt her letting out nervous gasps from time to time. It's all going to be fine, Jack said comfortingly. Easy for you to say, she is, after all, your mother, Rainn answered. Her senses were much more alert, and she listened to the various sounds that were going on around her. Relax, Jack said again for the millionth time that day. What if she doesn't like me? She will love you, that I am sure of, Jack answered and placed a reassuring arm around her. How do I look? Dazzling, nothing short of amazing, Jack answered as he went on to throw a look at Rainn's outfit. He had picked out the outfit for her, and loved that he was spot on with the color that he had chosen. Rainn had on a royal purple chiffon dress that was strapless and looked very stylish. She had a light shade of makeup on, that Jack had asked a makeup and hairstylist to take care of, with her hair up in a tight bun. She had a platinum low-heel shoe to match, with an equally platinum purse to complement the entire outfit. He was also equally nervous about Rainn meeting his mother. Jack was all nerves but hid it very well. The waiter walked in, and Rainn could tell from the distant footsteps and from the low-heel manly shoe that it was not Jack's mother. Can I take your order now? He asked. He had his hands to his
censored
and humbly waited for the couple's response. We are still waiting on someone, but you can have the duck.
Censored.
Prepared she should not be long, Jack said. Any wine? Champagne perhaps, the waiter went on to ask. Yes, please. Jack nodded. Champagne should be a wonderful fit for the occasion. Rainn heard the waiter walk out of the private booth slowly, and held her breath. She was still nervous and felt her throat go dry. She was just about to suggest to Jack to order some stilled water before she heard them, strong feminine steps walking towards the door. From the short strides that she was taking, Rainn could tell that she commanded attention from the room. She could hear Jack freeze once the steps halted on the doorway. The attitude in the room suddenly changed, and so did Jack's demeanor. Good afternoon, Mother, Jack said and walked towards the door. For the first time in their relationship, Jack thanked God that Rainn was blind and could not see the dirty look that his mother threw her way. Good afternoon, son, she said. Rainn could tell that they had exchanged warm greetings, and a slight peck was planted on her cheek. She automatically scrambled to her feet and waited for the introduction. She could feel her looking her way and was not so sure if she liked her. Good afternoon, ma'am, Rainn politely greeted and was sure that she had let out her most dazzling smile. She was so humble that she had to stop herself from curtsying. She heard Jack's mother walk over to her and accepted the handshake that she had offered. Good afternoon, she replied and pulled back the seat that had strategically been placed opposite them. Jack was by her side in a minute and helped her to take her seat as well. Jack has told me so much about you, Rainn began. I was really looking forward to meeting you, ma'am. Funny, Jack has mentioned nothing about you to me, she answered. And you can call me Selena, all this man business is making me feel old. Okay, Rainn answered meekly, and placed her sweaty hand on her knee under the table. I am mentioning it now, Mother, Jack retorted. He did not like how his mother was on Rainn's case, and wished that she could stop badgering her. Is that what we have come to, Jack? We don't tell each other anything anymore? Jack was saved by the waiter who walked in at the right time, and he decided to evade his question. "Should I bring out the meal now, sir?" he asked politely. "Yes, please." Jack then turned to his mother, as he watched the waiter leave the room. "I ordered your favorite, mother. The duck."
Censored.
"I am not hungry, Jack," she answered curtly, and watched as the waiter walked in with a bucket of ice and a champagne bottle in the middle of it. "But I will certainly have a drink," she answered once she spotted the champagne, and smiled up to the waiter who was pouring her a glass. Rainn had by now gotten the message from the mood in the room, all too clear now. She knew that Selena did not like her, and Jack was trying all in his power to neutralize her words and her nasty demeanor. Selena all of a sudden turned her attention to Rainn, and this caught her unawares. "So Rainn, what do you want from my son?" she asked, after downing a flute of champagne and offering the waiter a smile. "I beg your pardon?" Rainn answered timidly. "I thought blind people listened better than everyone else," she said rudely. "Mother," Jack shouted, obviously appalled by his mother's harsh words, "why are you so harsh to Rainn? You've only just met her." "Son, you will thank me I did this one day," she said as she pointed to Rainn outwardly. "This woman does not love you, she is only taking advantage of your success." "Mother, please," Jack was about to confess his undying love for Rainn before his mother cut him short. "Do not mother please me," Selena barked, before turning to Rainn's direction one more time. "I gotta hand it to you, Rainn. You are an actress who never hit the screen. Hollywood is surely missing out on a gem here." Selena was on her feet before Jack could come up with a defense. She clapped her hands together as a sign of applause in Rainn's direction before saying, "You deserve an award, dearie. Even I could never think of such a con." "Mother, for crying out loud," Jack said angrily. He was ashamed by her mother's behavior and the rudeness that she was displaying at the lunch. "Jack, I will tell you this and I will only say it once," she said as he fixed her glance at Jack. "This, whatever you think that you have going on here, is not good for your career. I decide what is best for my career, not you," Jack roared, slamming down his fist on the table. "As a matter of fact, I had planned to do this the right way. I only thought that you would be happy for me, but I was gravely wrong." "Do what, Jack?" In response, Jack took out a small box from his jacket pocket and walked over to where Rainn was silently seated, listening to the mother-son feud. "Rainn, my love, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" He was now on bended knee. He held out the ring in his hand as he stretched it out to Rainn. "Oh my God! Jack, is that a ring you have in your hand?" Rainn asked with both a feeling of confusion and excitement in her voice. "Yes, my love, it is. What say you?" "Of course I will marry you." The two huddled together in a tight embrace, and both could feel Selena's gaze on them as they shared their happy moment together. "I can't stand this," Selena said disgustedly, and stormed out of the room in a fiery rage. "Wait, I need to know, are you being serious, or were you just doing it to get back at your mother?" Rainn asked, curious and slightly shaken by the drama that was unfolding. "I bought the ring about 2 months ago," Jack started, and from the smile that formed on Rainn's face, he was glad that he had answered her question. "Does that mean that you'll move in with me now?" he asked. "Do I have a choice?" The two locked each other in a tight embrace, and Rainn could feel tears of joy swell up in her eyes. She had never for once thought that she could be that happy in life. The warm feeling that caressed her heart sent more tears down her cheeks. Rainn, however, did not ignore the fact that the media would have a field day with that information, and knew that they were about to hit a very huge storm in their relationship. Chapter 15. Jack looked at the few newspapers that they had gotten that morning. The press had been camped outside their apartment for the last 2 days, and there was nothing much they could do about it. Jack had tried to get his lawyers to get the press off their backs, but there was only so much they could do. As long as they were not trespassing, they were allowed to take pictures and gossip about Rainn and Jack's relationship. "This one sounds friendly," Jack announced. He held up the newspaper that was in his hands as a reference and looked at Rainn's direction. They were at the dining table having breakfast, and Rainn was nibbling on her buttered toast. "Read it to me, please," Rainn pleaded, and sat patiently waiting for Jack to read out to her. "It says the press should stop hounding the two lovebirds. For the first time in the history of mankind, Jack and his blushing bride-to-be have literally proved to us that love is indeed blind. You're right, that is the friendliest the media has been to us. Which paper are you reading from?" "Early Bird," Jack answered back. He threw a quick glance at the other newspapers that were carelessly sprawled on the table. Love or sham? The con of the century. Rising blindly up the social ladder. These were only some of the many headlines that had made the front page of other newspapers that week. He thanked God that Rainn had not seen any of them. "So the wedding planner is coming over today," Jack announced, after taking a sip from his coffee cup. "About that," Rainn said, "you will not believe the number of calls that I have coming my way from wedding planners. These people are vultures," Jack said, and let out a small chuckle after mentioning this. "If it is okay with you, I would like to choose my own wedding planner," Rainn said as she made a mental note of a few potential candidates that she thought were a good fit for the job. "That's fine," he agreed before another sip of his drink. "Are you settling in well?" "I honestly miss my old house. Sometimes I knock into things around here," Rainn admitted. "I guess it will take time getting used to the change." Rainn could hear Jack butter his toast as he made approving sounds to her concerns. "I hope the staff are not giving you a hard time?" Jack went on to ask, concerned. "No, they are not," she answered quickly when she remembered how Stuart, the butler, had been very helpful to her. "I might have to force them to take leave for the next 2 weeks," Jack said. "Why?" "The press might want to get them to speak of the things that happened behind closed doors. I'll only have a few of them over to do the cooking and cleaning until this blows over," Jack replied. "They would go to that extent?" Rainn asked, shocked. "You have no idea how far these people are willing to go," Jack replied, before letting out a sarcastic chuckle. "Do you want me to sit in on the interviews that you'll conduct with the wedding planners?" Jack offered. "I think you are the first groom who has ever offered to lend a hand to the bride's wedding planning," Rainn answered before letting out an amused laugh. "Well, it's my wedding too," Jack also laughed. There was an awkward moment of silence that followed, and Rainn wondered how she would address the elephant in the room. "Have you talked to your mother since?" she inquired. Her plate was almost empty now, and she took a sip of orange juice as she waited for Jack to respond. "Not really," Jack answered before clearing his throat and explaining. "She left a couple of messages on my cell phone about the wedding and the media." "Have you replied to them?" "Some." Jack went on to explain. She knew that it was a very touchy subject for Rainn and treaded very softly on it. "She sounds concerned for both of us." He sounded slightly alarmed when he said the last bit, and Rainn could detect it in his voice. "What about your father?" Rainn asked. "What about him? Does he know about the news? Will he come to the wedding?" Rainn probed on. "I don't know, and I honestly couldn't give 3 shades of a monkey's ass," Jack replied. "You sound angry," Rainn pointed out. "I am not angry at the man who abandoned me and didn't want anything to do with me for the last God knows how many years." "You don't have to be sarcastic to prove your point," Rainn chided, and she could hear Jack scuffle to his feet, heading over to the liquor cabinet. She listened to the clinking of glass and the soft thud of bottle meeting the rim, before feeling the whiff of gin play on her nostrils. "Too early to drink, don't you think?" Rainn asked when she heard Jack resume his seat after serving himself a drink. "Well, it must still be nightfall somewhere," Jack pointed out, and went on to sip from his glass. "You must notice that you get really sensitive about this subject all the time," Rainn pointed out. She could hear Jack gulp down the drink like water, and he got to his feet a second time. She heard him pour some more liquor into the glass. This time it was whiskey, and he walked back to his seat. "I don't think you should be mixing such hard stuff this early in the morning," Rainn warned as she heard him resume his seat, listening to him taking yet another gulp from his glass. "Rainn, my love, I'm a grown-ass man. I can do whatever the hell I damn well please, at whatever time of the day or night," Jack shouted. He was both angry and defensive at the same time. Rainn knew where the conversation was bound to head, and got to her feet. She felt through the different furniture in the room, and wished that she was back at her apartment, where she would be able to storm out, without the need to feel through the room. "I think you should go for therapy," Rainn started. "You need to sort out your daddy issues." Jack was about to say something else in his defense, when he was stopped mid-sentence by Rainn. "It brings out a dark side in you every time you talk about him. It makes me have second thoughts about the man that I thought I fell in love with," Rainn cried before walking out the door. Jack was left in the room pondering about what Rainn had just said. He knew she was right, but he did not want to admit it. He took another swig from his glass, and loved how the drink burnt his throat, gliding all the way to his stomach. He thought of what lay ahead, and knew that he would need to step up for the sake of Rainn and their future family. His thoughts, however, were diverted when he heard a distant clutter coming from downstairs, followed by a slight stifled scream. Jack hurriedly got to his feet, and went to see what was going on. Rainn was seated on the floor next to a broken vase in the hallway. Stuart the butler was at her side in a second, and was trying to help her to her feet. "Are you okay, Rainn?" Jack asked, worried. "What happened?" "I walked into the vase. I must have forgotten that it was placed there," Rainn explained. "I am so sorry." "No need to be sorry," Jack cautioned. "Are you okay?" "I'll go and get the first aid kit, sir," Stuart said as he turned his attention towards Jack. "It's not a deep cut." "Thank you, Stuart," Jack replied gratefully and watched as he swiftly moved through the hallway. He turned his attention back to Rainn, and Rainn bowed her head. "I am sorry," she mouthed again, and a few tears welled up in her eyes. "It's okay." Stuart walked back with the first aid kit, and Jack accepted it from him before leading Rainn away to a living room sofa. He dressed the wound, and watched as Rainn winced at the touch of disinfectant on the cut. "I need time to get used to the house," Rainn said after Jack was done placing a bandage on the cut. Rainn had cut herself on her foot, and she directed her hand to feel if Jack had done a good job on it. "Thank you," she mouthed and offered him an approving smile. "We need to get you a walking stick," Jack said. "I do not need a walking stick," Rainn said defensively. She could feel the liquor on his breath as he moved closer to her. "I insist," he said, and from his tone, Rainn decided not to argue with him. The two sat in the living room, comfortable in each other's arms, and both took solace in the other's presence. Rainn, however, felt a fear at the pit of her stomach, but decided to ignore it. Chapter 16. Rainn sat on the balcony on a lovely Sunday afternoon and went through the events that had unraveled in the previous few weeks. She felt the ring on her finger and used her right hand to take it off and feel it with her palms. It was the perfect fit, and the fact that it meant something to her made her feel excited and warm inside. She listened to her surroundings as she did this, and enjoyed how the birds sang in the nearby trees. Her mind thought of the few wedding planners that she had interviewed so far, and her mind was decided on a couple in particular. She raced back to the songs they had suggested for her, but had declined them all. There was a piece that she had been working on, and she knew that it would be perfect for the walk down the aisle. She also had the perfect dress design, and wished that she had the eyesight to see how lovely it was. Familiar distant footsteps disturbed her thoughts, and she felt excited knowing that it was her lover approaching. She, however, felt disappointed when she listened more keenly, knowing he must be drunk from the staggering steps that he was making towards her. "Hello, dear," Jack said as he planted a light
Censored.
on Rainn's cheek. She felt a wave of disappointment rush over her again as her fears were confirmed. His breath reeked of alcohol, and from the swish of his left hand she could tell that he was still drinking. "Started earlier than usual today," Rainn commented, and listened to him as he sat next to her at the balcony. "Well," he answered and did not bother to add anything else to his short statement. Rainn did not feel like getting into a fight with him, but she could feel the anger within her boiling. "I don't like it," she said, getting to her feet to prove her point. "Well, you had better get used to it," Jack said, and he too got up, walking over to where Rainn was. They stood face to face before Rainn could feel the strange new scent on him. "What is that?" Rainn asked curiously, and leaned closer to him to get a stronger feel of it. "Come on, Rainn. You have smelled the liquor on me before," Jack complained. "No, there is something else other than the liquor," Rainn insisted, and moved even closer to him. She could feel it even more now, a strange scent unknown to her. "What is it?" Rainn insisted. "Okay, I may have smoked some meth earlier on," Jack confessed, and did not seem to care after his confession. "Where did you get it from?" Rainn demanded in an irritated voice. "What do you mean, where did I get it from?" Jack said sarcastically, "like I would tell you where I got meth from. I'm not insane." Rainn felt his words hit hard on her heart like a sledgehammer, but chose to remain silent. She knew that he was only acting this way because of the dig, but was still very hurt nevertheless. She turned on her heel and started heading back into the house from the balcony, but was pulled back by Jack, who held on to her left wrist. "Where are you going?" Jack barked. "As far away from you as I possibly can get. I cannot be around you when you are like this," she wailed and turned again, trying to get away from him. "Don't go," he both pleaded and commanded, still with a firm grip on her. "Let go of me," she shouted at the top of her voice. "You are not going anywhere," Jack snarled. Rainn stopped struggling and turned to face him. She could feel his warm breath close to her, and she did not like how his scent was overpowering her and weakening her knees. She mastered all the courage she could and spoke to him. "You need help, Jack. You need to stop doing this to yourself," Rainn shouted. From the way his breathing changed, she could tell that he was really mad. "I don't need any help," Jack shouted back, "and you will not tell me what I need or do not need." "I will tell you what I don't need," she barked. "I do not need you in my life anymore. I cannot build a future with someone who does not love himself enough to admit that he needs help at a point of addiction." Rainn did not know where she had gotten all that courage from, but she knew that it had been a long time coming. "You are leaving me," he shouted back angrily, before throwing the bottle that he had in his hand. It landed on the ground floor straight from the balcony, making a loud crashing sound. Rainn felt a fear rise from the pit of her stomach to the end of her fingers and toes. She could taste blood in her mouth, and a cold sweat broke on her forehead. Her first instinct after this explosion was to run, and run she did. She ran back into the house and knocked on a few things before landing face flat on the ground. Jack was of course hot on her trail, and he let out a wicked laugh that made Rainn shiver to the very core of her being. She wondered why no one could hear all the noise that was coming from them, and decided to scream and shout for help. She let out an ear-splitting, thundering scream that made her throat sore. She did not stop at that, and was just about to let out another when Jack sat by her side and placed a hand over her mouth. "No one can hear you from all the way over here," he said. He still had the wicked demeanor, which made Rainn even more nervous. "I sent the staff away, remember?" he asked. "Why are you doing this to me? I thought you loved me," Rainn asked and fought back a few tears. "I love you so much that I cannot stand to let you go," Jack said. He reached into his pocket and took out a strip of cocaine that had been rolled into a joint. He then held up her nose and let the powder run through her nostrils. Rainn immediately sneezed it out, and felt her head spin around the room. She felt weak for a moment, and her blood froze in her veins. She felt a slight high before a cold shiver ran up her spine, and she hugged herself tightly. "That's a good girl," Jack said before lifting her chin up and adding more cocaine into her other nostrils. Rainn felt the same reaction as before, now struggling with a foreign headache and dizziness. She could feel her surroundings fade away, and relaxed into Jack's embrace. Her body was suddenly as heavy as lead, and everything sounded distant. Jack held on to her for a minute longer, before dipping his hand in the same pocket and pulled out a similar drug. He sniffed the cocaine through both his nostrils, just as he had made Rainn do, but chased down the drink with his usual gin poison. "If I can't have you, no one will," he let out and moved closer to Rainn. He made her heavy body lie on his
censored
and smiled when he thought of the Romeo and Juliet scene that he would give the homicide people once they walked in on them. He let the effects of the drugs take over him, as he thought of what the afterlife might feel like. He felt encouraged that he would be with Rainn on the other side, and hoped that she would not be blind in the other world. The effect on him was faster, as he had taken a series of drugs prior, and he was soon lying unconscious on the floor. He did not hear Rainn sit up, neither did he hear her crawl away from him on her stomach. Rainn felt restless, her body was partly paperweight and partly stone-like. She fumbled through the room, as she tried to make a recollection of having a phone perched somewhere in the vicinity. Her hand finally grabbed at a receiver, and hope was rekindled in her when she placed it over her ear and heard that it was working. She punched in Yvonne's number that she knew by heart and waited for it to connect. The long unanswered beeping sounds were tormenting her, and she said a silent prayer that Yvonne would pick up the phone. Her head was feeling lighter, and she could feel herself drift away into nothingness. "Hello?" Yvonne's voice sounded over the receiver, and Rainn felt relief by the sound of her voice. "It's Rai. She managed to mouth before she realized that her speech was blurry and she could not really make out the words that were coming out of her mouth. "Rainn? Is that you?" Yvonne asked almost immediately, with a concern in her voice. Rainn tried to speak up again. She tried to make the words come out of her mouth, but it was an uphill task. Everything in her body seemed to be displaced, misplaced, and rearranged. "Rainn? Rainn? Rainn? Are you there?" Yvonne asked again. Rainn could tell that she was talking to someone else in the room, but it was a distant and strange voice to her. "I think there is something wrong with her. I can't really reach her." Yvonne spoke put loud to whoever she was with in the room. Help me please," Rainn managed to finally say after a lot of effort. Her body slumped to the floor, and the phone fell from her hand as well. It rolled out to God knows where, and Rainn could feel all the strength in her body slowly succumb to the drugs. She let her head face her lover's direction, and could feel a fresh pool of tears well up in her eyes at the thought of his limp, almost lifeless body lying on the floor a few feet from her. She tried to search in her heart for any hateful word that she could utter out to him in these desperate moments. But even at that point, at that moment in her life when Rainn was staring despair right in the face, she could not find it in her to hate Jack. "You were my drug, Jack," she thought to herself. "You didn't need to add any other." Her eyes were slightly shutting, and her lips could not move anymore. All distant movement around her slowly came to her halt. Rainn could only imagine Jack's face smiling down at her, just as she had always imagined it. The image warmed her heart, and she let out a slight smile before saying, "I love you, Jack, I always will, in this world or the next." Chapter 17. Is she okay? Can she hear us? Rainn slowly stirred, hearing frantic whispers and murmurings. Her body and mind were slowly coming round, after the overdose Jack had forced upon her. Jack. What had happened to him, she wondered. Where was he? "Hello," Rainn uttered weakly, head pounding. "Where am I? What happened?" "She's awake. She's awake." Yvonne and Margaret's voice chimed in unison. "Where am I?" Rainn repeated, looking confused. Her surroundings smelt very sterile. Rainn could detect the scent of strong bleach. She also smelt the cloying scent of lilies. "You're in hospital, Rainn," Margaret explained. "You were in a terrible way when Stuart found you. God knows what would have happened if he wasn't there. We might have lost you." Margaret wailed as she broke down, sobbing heavily as Yvonne took over. "Stuart returned after being sent away with all the other staff. He had a gift for you as a surprise and wanted to hand-deliver it. Stuart had heard Jack talking of a walking stick and thought it might make your life easier, especially in an unfamiliar place. He saved you." Rainn frowned as she listened to Yvonne's version of the story, impatient to hear what else had happened. Where was Jack? She could kill him. Stuart walked in to see you both unconscious. Yvonne continued, "You had a phone near you, obviously calling for help. Jack had a small pool of blood near his head. Stuart checked you were okay first, and then rang for an ambulance. He looked at the call history and contacted us shortly after." At news of Jack, Rainn tried sitting up. A sharp pain in her head prevented her from moving too rapidly. Easing herself gently into an upright position, Rainn began to speak. Blood? What happened? Is he alive? Where is he? Margaret regained her composure and began to make soothing sounds, trying to calm Rainn. Hush, Rainn. Don't work yourself up, Jack is alive. The important thing is that you get better. You were very ill, we're so glad you're going to make a full recovery. Where's Jack? Rainn demanded angrily. Margaret and Yvonne shared a look, both secretly glad Rainn could not see. Suddenly, they were saved from Rainn's questioning by the sound of the door opening. All three women turned their heads in the direction of the disruption, Margaret and Yvonne visibly relaxing. Rainn still looked puzzled and angry. From the sound of the slow, steady footsteps, she guessed it was a man. She smelt cinnamon and coffee. The air did not smell of wood or gin, it was not Jack. Rainn was silently pleased, she would not have to confront her demons so soon. Rainn? I'm so glad you're awake, I've been terribly worried. I'm so sorry I wasn't here when you came round. Through Rainn's muddled head she recognized Stuart's voice. She felt both happy and strangely shy as she greeted the man who saved her life. Stuart, thank you so much for rescuing me, however can I repay you? What must you have thought? Rainn despaired. It sure was a shock seeing you and Mr. Bradley like that, Stuart admitted. I couldn't believe my eyes. I should have been there to protect you. Stuart bit his lip, worried he'd said too much. Rainn sensed his discomfort, politely ignoring his embarrassment. Stuart, would you please do one more thing for me? Would you please tell me what happened? I'll be an old woman before I get the truth out of these two. Rainn gestured to Margaret and Yvonne, both giggling, thrilled that Rainn had not lost her sense of humor. Of course I'll tell you, Rainn. But before I begin, I don't want to upset you. Are you sure you want to hear this? Stuart asked. Rainn thought for a moment and then nodded. Hearing it cannot be as bad as experiencing it, she reasoned. I need to know what happened before I can move on. I will not let these events define me. Stuart acquiesced, making himself comfortable in an armchair before beginning. Well, I came by the house with a walking stick. I knew you were against the idea, but I just wanted to help you. It was my grandmother's. I hoped you might like to run your fingers over the wooden carvings. It has elephants carved into the handle. My grandmother was a great animal lover. I hoped you could use the stick as I moved furniture with your supervision, to make you more comfortable. It would be easier for you to get your bearing that way. I'd hate for you to get hurt again, like that day with the vase. Rainn was touched at the thoughtfulness of this man. Jack had never considered moving the furniture. He was too attached to his expensive antiques and relished having them on display. She also noted the adoring tone with which he spoke of his grandmother. Family values were important to Rainn, and she found Stuart more intriguing as he continued. I walked in and the house was deadly silent. I thought you may have been out for lunch, so I went to the balcony to leave the gift. I know you love to spend time there, because you can feel the warmth of the sun and smell the beautiful flowers. I walked into the room and thought I entered a horror scene. You and Mr. Bradley were both unconscious, and the room stank of liquor and blood. I ran over to check if you were okay. You were breathing, but your pulse was very faint. I called for an ambulance on my cell phone. Then I noticed the phone by your hand. I checked the call history and got in touch with your sister and cousin. Yvonne and Margaret blushed at their mention in Stuart's story and beckoned for him to continue, both inwardly delighted at his obvious adulation for Rainn. I went to check Mr. Bradley next. I felt guilty for not checking him first. He is my boss after all, but I was so worried about you. I've seen Mr. Bradley like that before. When he drinks and takes drugs, he's not a good man. I checked his pulse too, his was stronger than yours. I sat next to you to wait. I kept talking to you, hoping you'd know who I was and that I was there for you. I hated the thought of you waking up alone and frightened, so I held your hand. The ambulance arrived with the police. Mr. Bradley was taken away in a separate vehicle. Stuart broke off, looking uneasy, unsure of how to continue. Rainn spoke softly, you looked after me, Thank you so much. Please don't be afraid to carry on. Jack, he got arrested, didn't he? Stuart stared at her, amazed at her perceptiveness and dazzled by her beauty. Yes, for drug possession and forceful consumption, what he did to you. He confessed to everything when he came round. He had a fantasy you were like Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lovers, destined to live and die together. He is being charged soon. I'm sorry. Rainn, to everyone's shock, smiled. She was glad to be free of Jack. She had not realized, until it was almost too late, how toxic their relationship was. She remembered the heartache he put her through all those months ago. Why had she taken him back? He was clearly mentally unstable. She didn't need a bad boy to tame. She didn't want to feel scared or small or intimidated. She wanted a good, honest man. Someone kind, who would want to take care of her and love her. Someone who did not drink or have irrational bursts of anger. She realized with a start that she wanted someone like Stuart. Stuart had helped her when she fell. Stuart had never been unkind to her in any way. He had wanted to move the furniture to make her comfortable, even though it would have gotten him in trouble with Jack. Stuart? Rainn began nervously. How long have you been here? Stuart thought for a moment. Well, you've been here 6 days. The first 2 I slept on the floor beside you. But your wonderful family told me to get some rest. With Mr. Bradley in prison, I have no work to do, so I've been spending my days here with Yvonne and Margaret, just hoping you'd wake up. Rainn felt stirrings of butterflies in her stomach. She was so touched at the sweetness of Stuart. She loved listening to him speak, his deep velvety voice sending shivers down her spine. Rainn blushed as her adoring crowd watched. Thinking deeply about the dependable, gentle man before her, she plucked up the courage to ask. Stuart, when I am out of hospital, would you perhaps like to go for a coffee? Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my book Dark Desire. About Summer Cooper. Thank you so much for reading. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for me to be a full-time author. I hope you enjoy reading my books as much as I do writing them. Besides, obviously, reading and writing, I also love cuddling my dogs, shouting at Alexa, being upside down, aka yoga, and driving my family cray-cray. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, BookBub. Get in touch at hello@summercooper.com. www.summercooper.com. Closing credits. This has been Bad Star. Written by Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited.